Hi, my name is Mayukh Sen, and I would put Kajukatli in my immigrant jam.
Oh my God, everybody, what's going on? This is another beautiful day here at Immigrant Jam headquarters. I am so excited about today's guest. First of all, I'm Lucie, your host. This is going to be so fun. Thank you for coming back if you've listened to any other episode. And thank you for, trying us out if you're new. Today, I talk about myself in the royal we. I am speaking to an amazing author, James Beard Award winner, author of a new book that I'm obsessed with, that I loved so much that I devoured in like half a day, called Tastemakers, Seven Immigrant Women Who Revolutionized Food in America. We are speaking to the amazing Mayukh Sen. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for that very, very kind introduction. So sweet.
It's the truth and nothing but the truth. So what did you want to put in your immigrant jam? I can't even try to repeat that.
Yeah, no worries. So it's called Kajukatli. It's
Kajukatli?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good job.
Thank you.
So it is a dessert that I grew up eating. I got from a lot of Bengali sweet shops growing up in New Jersey, but it's basically like a cashew-based, I guess fudge is the imprecise term that you could use, or the best approximation, rather. But it's like this cashew paste that's like sweetened with sugar, obviously. Maybe there's some ghee in it, and it's kind of little diamonds. It was just my favorite sweet growing up.
Wow.
And I miss it so much because I'm like on my dairy-free kick right now.
Oh,
so
no.
I can't like have ghee and stuff like that. And I'm also like in my little no sugar added phase,
no.
So I'm like depriving myself of these pleasures, but I would definitely put that in my immigrant jam.
So is it kind of like halva then? in a way?
Yeah, it's very similar, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you would eat it for dessert, or would it be like more like a sweet little, like a candy that you would eat?
Yeah, it would probably be, so in the context that I grew up eating it in, it was usually like after dinner, we would like treat ourselves to this thing while like watching TV or whatever, but it could be
Nice.
served at like, gatherings and special occasions, stuff like that. So.
That's great. Would your mom or your parents make this, or would you buy it somewhere?
Well, you'd usually buy it somewhere. I think that my mom, who is a wonderful cook, would try to make it sometimes. And I wish I could remember if it was like really good or not. And like she is a fantastic cook, you know what I mean? But some things are really tough, and you just kind of, store-bought is the preferred one usually. So
The store?
Yeah.
Store-bought, it's called?
No.
Store-bought.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
No, you're
My
fine.
brain, I swear to God, I have no logic in my brain. I hear the most illogical thing possible on the list of things. Store-bought. Yeah. I'm like, store-bought? Is that a store in New Jersey?
You're just like me. I
my
do the same
God.
thing, or I just like make up words that I like hear. I'm like, what?
I hear insane things, and I really hear them. Okay, so not store-bought. Don't go looking for a store called store-bought in
Maybe
New
it
Jersey.
exists. Who knows? Like.
Hi, I'm looking for a store-bought that has the best Kajukatli in New Jersey. Hello. Wow. So I want to dive into the book and everything, but first, can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up? And your parents were Bengali immigrants, and you grew up in New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and all of that?
Totally. So I grew up in Jersey, obviously, suburban New Jersey. I was raised in Edison and then North Brunswick, two very exciting towns. And so I was born in the early 90s, and I...
Oh, yeah, same.
Yeah, totally right. But sorry, I don't want to come across as ageist or something. I'm like making a joke.
No, not at all.
But I grew up in the 90s, and I grew up speaking both Bengali and English at home because my paternal grandparents lived with us. My parents had an arranged marriage, actually. And so I grew up in that kind of environment. But we grew up comfortably middle class, I would say. And oh God, I'm trying to think of like how to make my childhood seem exciting. I think that a lot of people might look at a South Asian person who grew up in New Jersey and be like, oh, you must have like been pressured to, I don't know, like study math a lot or like, become a doctor, an engineer, or something like that. And that was just not the case for my family at all. And I'm so fortunate in that regard. My dad, by day, he worked in IT, to make ends meet. But by night, he was an artistically inclined man. He wrote plays. He directed short films. He had plays at the Fringe Festival. When I was growing up in the early aughts and stuff like that.
So you'd go?
Yeah, I would go.
Oh,
and
cool.
my sister, who's 8 years older than me, she was also an actress. At one point, she went to Tisch at NYU to study drama there, and so that was a big part of my life. And the arts were always really encouraged within my family. And I think that within the larger context of other South Asians I knew growing up in Jersey, that made us kind of an outlier because, there's this kind of stereotype that a lot of Bengalis are artistically inclined or whatever, and, they love literature and cinema and all that stuff, right? Yet, when I think about other family friends of ours who were Bengali, I don't know that that was quite the case in the families that I saw, so our family environment felt really unique in that regard. And so I feel so lucky and grateful to have grown up, watching movies by Hitchcock and Satyajit Ray and all those people. So yeah, it was a nice childhood for.
And your grandparents who lived with you, were they also artistic, that they encouraged that, or were your parents breaking with tradition doing that?
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, I did not mean to erase my mother from this narrative because, my dad was the one who was very artistically inclined.
Right.
But my mom, who also works in IT, she was not as into film and stuff like that until she had this arranged marriage to my dad, and so she's just kind of what did I get myself into? That's my understanding of it anyway. But over time, she really came around and started to really appreciate film and other forms of art just right along with us. But in terms of my paternal grandparents, my paternal grandfather, who died in 2006, he was this professor, and he was a very, very literary and erudite man. And so that was kind of in his blood as well. And so he passed that down onto me. My grandma, from my recollection, not so much. I was very young when she died, and she was a woman who's filled with a lot of love for me, but I don't know that she quite had the same artistic itch as I had. So.
And how did your parents or your family end up in New Jersey or in the U.S.? Because you were born here, right?
I was born here, yes. Right. So I was born in New Jersey, but my parents were originally born in what is now India. Mm-hmm. So my dad grew up in the city of Kolkata or Calcutta, and my mom grew up in a village called Balrampur. And so the way they ended up in Jersey was that my dad, after finishing undergrad in India in the 70s, he decided to get his master's in computer science at Rutgers in New Jersey. And so he came here in the late 1970s. And so then when he went back to India, he had this arranged marriage and was like, okay, well, I know this place, so why don't we, all just kind of go there as a little clan. And unfortunately, the way that arranged marriage worked was such that my mom had to basically say farewell to her own parents, whom she loved so dearly and whom I love so dearly, and I would really cherish, any kind of contact I could have with them growing up because it was so limited, but she basically had to refashion her sense of what family was, in her early years in America, and that wasn't really her choice. So sorry to get so dour in minute 5, but
Did you feel like an immigrant growing up? Did you feel, or do you have a memory of the first time where you felt that, or you felt this feeling of being an immigrant or an outsider in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like an outsider in so many ways, and I guess if I'm trying to kind of think back, I did feel like an immigrant in a lot of ways too. I think, let's start with my name. Mayukh is not exactly the easiest name for a lot of people, including other South Asians, to pronounce. I would even within like, this context of the larger South Asian community in Jersey, just like constantly get made fun of for my name. Everyone would be
Really?
like, my poop, or like kind of
Oh,
stuff,
no way.
And it was just kind of like a
Wow.
fact of life, starting in like preschool or kindergarten, stuff like that, So I definitely felt like an outsider in that regard. I didn't quite have that moment that other kids might have where they're like, Mom, Dad, why did you name me this? It's so tough. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. This is my name. Whatever. Deal with it. It's fine. Sometimes, I would say my name's Michael or Mike or something like that. I still do that if I'm like going to a coffee shop or whatever and have to like give an order.
Right.
Because
The Starbucks name.
Yeah, because, I got to make the barista, like, they're already getting paid shit, right? So it's like, why make their lives like even more difficult by like making them pronounce this name they might not be familiar with. But yeah, so I was made to feel different in that way. But I think also, I was, even though I didn't really realize it growing up, I was queer and I'm queer now and I'm out and everything like that. But I was definitely made to feel different for my interests in the sense that I was a kid who always gravitated towards the Barbie dolls, and I was obsessed with like Disney princesses and Madeline, the show / storybook about
Yeah.
that little girl in France and everything like that.
Yes.
And that made me such a supreme oddity, at school, and like so many people, boys, girls, everyone, even teachers would make fun of me. I remember in 3rd grade, people call me Madonna singer because I had this obsession with Madonna and I would like perform songs by her. And I was just like, catnip for bullies, basically. And so I guess you could say that I felt like an immigrant because of my queerness, in some ways too, which is kind of a weird concept, probably like fraught. I don't even know, but like it feels apt for this conversation.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that, this feeling of being an outsider, right? Or other, or kind of not fitting in. Did your parents want you to assimilate? Did they want you to be American? Do you know what I mean? Like, did they themselves want to fit in and be American, or did they? Because I think a lot of immigrants, like, there's like 2 ways that a lot of immigrants go. It's like either they sort of like double down on their immigrant identity to keep it intact or for fear of losing that, or they like shun it in a way and they were like, we're American now and we're not teaching our kids our language and we're only eating hamburgers every day.
Right. Yeah, I would say that, growing up, we had a pretty healthy mix, in our house of, this kind of desire to assimilate to make our lives easier, if that makes sense, and kind of, make surviving in this country easier, but also preserving aspects of our culture that, define who we are and make us who we are, And so, like, even if we were looking at the dinner table in my home, my mom had a really nice rotation of, on a few days I would have Bengali food, so I would have like chicken and chol, which is basically a chicken curry, quote unquote. That's an indelicate translation. And I would have other kind like dal and stuff like that, and rice, et cetera, et cetera. But then on the next night I would have like pasta or whatever, or mac and cheese or something like that. And so yeah, and I think that when I think about my childhood, I get the sense that my parents were okay with me being proud of my Bengali heritage, but also knowing kind of how to conduct myself outside of the home, to make my life easier and to make surviving easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I think that, that's another thing you write about in your book as well. So to get into your book a little bit, or to start to get into it for those people listening that haven't read the book, as the title says, it's about 7 immigrant women who, change the way that we eat and think about the foods from their countries and beyond as well, I think, and the focus is also on the fact that their being immigrants and their, language barriers kept them from achieving sort of celebrity status or being sort of having a place in the American cultural memory, right?
It's a good word. Yes.
And you kind of juxtapose it with Julia Child, who everybody knows, obviously.
Wait, who's that?
You write in the first few pages of the book that it's also a criticism on capitalism.
What kind of unlocked that bigger framework, you could say, about capitalism was kind of me looking at my own story and me being like, okay, you know what? Like, what weirdness have I felt over the past few years, just navigating the food industry as a writer, and I realized that there's so many times in which I felt as though I had to silence myself in order to survive and make enough money to live the kind of lifestyle that I want, a healthy, comfortable lifestyle in New York City, right? And there were other times in which I felt as though I had to really shout the fact that I'm a queer person of color and a child of immigrants, because I realized that there are certain gatekeepers who would pay attention to me more, as a result of that. And I was almost tokenizing myself in those ways. And so I, writing this book made me reflect on just what I had been through over like the course of, I don't know, like 4 years. However, so I started doing this in 2016, writing about food professionally. And that's a weird story too, because I never planned on writing about food like in my life. And I don't want to bore you with that whole, that whole narrative or whatever, but it happened to me by a total accident. I grew up wanting to be a film critic, and that was kind of a result of, watching so many movies growing up and everything like that because of my dad. But then like food writing, it just kind of happened to me after a year and a half of freelancing. I got this job offer from a site called Food 52, and they're like, we want a staff writer who like is not a food person, someone who neither cooks nor knows much about restaurants. And I'm like, I'm your guy, I don't know anything. See, something I omitted from my upbringing story is that, we were not a family that like grew up eating out a lot. We went to like Cheesecake Factory and P.F. Chang's as like, our luxury like night outs and everything like that, but nights out, excuse me. But like, I didn't have a kind of concept of what it meant to like dine out properly or whatever, So that was the sort of rudimentary understanding of food that I was bringing to the table, but just over the course of a few years in food media, by the time I wrote this book, I'd just been through so much as a result of, belonging to marginalized communities, not, being part of this dominant culture and, expressing my opinions about the ways in which the industry is broken, And so I think in that last stage of book writing, I was able to be like, okay, let's get as personal as you can, Mayukh, and kind of ask yourself, like, what challenges have you faced and how could you maybe use that to become more empathetic about the way you frame each of these 7 stories and Julia Child's. So,
Yes, and that's why I said earlier, you take yourself out, but in a way you don't, because it does feel very personal. And it is this really beautiful way to set up the book where it's like, okay, we're seeing it through your eyes,
right.
but the way that you're cooking it up for us. I'm sure people do that all the time in interviews with you. They're
it's great.
So proud of themselves for like using a little food pun.
I slip into it sometimes too, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is embarrassing.
But yeah, the way that you cook it up makes it feel like they're cooking it up,
right.
But
yes.
we're still seeing it through your eyes. So,
right.
You decenter yourself, but in a way it's you all the way through because of the way you set it up,
right. Totally. Yeah.
But it made me kind of think that in doing that, you're also doing what these women did, because I'm sure that it was a brave thing to do in the food industry to write that in the beginning of a book about these chefs, because it is a criticism. Your book is also criticism on the food industry, because they're the ones who sort of shunned, the media and the food industry. Right. They're the ones who sort of shunned or suppressed these stories from taking a real seat at the table, right?
Right.
So it made me think like, I don't know, a lot of times immigrants and children of immigrants have this like type of courage to do stuff like that, and I wonder, like, is it because we have to, this breaking with tradition,
right.
And I wonder what you think about that, because I feel like you're doing a lot of that by even just writing this book.
Wow, thank you for saying that, because something I worried about when I was writing this book is like, am I being too polite? Do I feel like a Miss America contestant being all like, well, here's what I think about, like the food industry, and like, making these very like, incremental suggestions about how it could be better or whatever. But I always did try to have that fighting spirit as much as possible, and maintain that, when I got to the industry, because the way that I saw it back in 2016, when I first started writing about food, I was like, damn, this industry feels so broken in so many ways, So at that aforementioned job at Food 52, I was the only person of color on the whole editorial staff of like, 10 white women. And, they're the best possible collection of white women, the finest examples of the genre, really, really amazing people who taught me so much and were so supportive of me and my viewpoint and everything like that. But I realized that, there are things that I was able to see about the narratives that were being effaced from, I don't know, like dominant stories. God, it's like narrative stories. I'm repeating the same words, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing what I could to redress that. And, if I do actually think about it, I had never really thought about it this way, but, the courage of my mother, for example, to survive in this sort of environment that was so hostile to her, this arranged marriage that had stripped her of so much that she knew and everything that was familiar and comforting to her, I saw that courage growing up and I admired it so much. And I admired her ability to live through that suffering and to raise me in a humane and loving way, and so I thought so much about my mom, as I was writing this book, and not to get all like Mr. Waterworks here or anything like that, but I do see this book in a lot of ways as like a love letter to my mom and to my dad, and to some extent too, because, he fought his own battles. He died of cancer in 2017. So thank you. So it's like 5 years ago now, which is wild to me. He was 65, so I would say it's pretty young, but he had been sick throughout like most of my life, pretty much. He had like triple bypass when I was like in 6th grade, and he was like a long time smoker, and it's just like, it was just a constant like I don't know what the word is. It's just like this domino effect of, all these terrible health issues plaguing him throughout his lifetime. And yet he did his best to kind of fight to survive, throughout all of that. And I saw my parents, fight his illnesses together in a lot of ways, And so I think that sort of spirit was, something that I had always, admired about them, and tried to make sure that I was going to, pass on or whatever, or maintain in my own life, So it's really funny to even like think about it this way, because the stakes are so much lower in like, we're talking about cancer, and it's like, and then when I became a food writer, I was like, wow, this industry's so broken. Let me like, recall the courage of my parents as, my father was dying, but I really do think there's a correlation there.
Of course. And also, you have what you have in front of you, right?
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. My dad just had a triple bypass last year, and he's type 1 diabetic. So it's hard to, it's very hard, but I think it's very inspiring when you grow up around that and you see people that, don't get bitter.
Right.
And don't get angry and let it out on everybody around them, but persevere. Right.
Yes.
That is something that I think, really, really is life-changing to be around.
Yeah.
And kind of puts everything into perspective.
And, that point about bitterness is so apt, because I really tried my best in this book to not sound bitter and to not feel like I was airing all my grievances or whatever, because first of all, that kind of book does not age well. And I don't want some person, picking this up in like a book club in, I don't know, Wisconsin, being like, why am I hearing about this, small child's like, like experiences, or, this like kind of dirty laundry he has to air or whatever, just like tell us the story and everything like that. And I really wanted to make sure that whatever bitterness I did have initially as a result of whatever experiences I had in the food industry had kind of cooled into something more mature,
What do you think food can communicate that language and words can't communicate about people or culture or where people come from? Like, I think that what's so fascinating is, I remember I used to live on First Avenue and there was a club across the street. So like at night I'd hear people like yelling and stuff. And I heard this girl one night go, "Oh my God, where are you from?"
Oh my God.
And the guy was like, "India." And she was like, "India? I love Indian food so much." And I'll never forget it because it made me laugh. But at the same time, I was like, oh yeah, it's amazing how, if you've eaten a food from a country or a place, you feel like you know it. You have an emotional connection because you've had an experience
Totally
eating that food.
exactly
Right? And so what is it though that it communicates? Do you know what I mean? I was thinking about that, and because you write about how what these women did changed the way we think about food, their food, but it's more than just food. It's changed the way we think about the cultures and the countries and the places and the language and
Right, totally. Yeah. I am still kind of arriving at an answer, even though this book came out almost a year ago. But I think that over the course of writing this book, I came to understand food as, an art form in the same way, we look at music and film and television and all that good stuff. And that was a concept that was foreign to me growing up, because as much as I love my mom's cooking, I was always like, okay, this is like, something that's going to get me from one day to the next,
Right.
It's just fuel. That is it, I did not sufficiently take pleasure in what was, to me, now I can see it as art, and so I do think that food is a form of artistic expression and it deserves to be honored as such. And I think that all 7 of the women in this book really did see their food as a form of artistic expression rather than just kind of, something to get them from one day to the next, and the reason why I really wanted to emphasize that point in this book is because the reason why I even wrote this book in the first place is because I saw so many narratives, back in like 2017, 2018, along the lines of, immigrants feed America and immigrants get the job done. And it's like, I'm going to try to be charitable for a sec and be like, okay, yeah, maybe you had the right intentions when you were saying that, but I felt so just like unsettled when I saw people bandying about those talking points because I was just like, that feels so impersonal. It almost feels like you're being very patronizing about immigrant lives and kind of, their aspirations and what immigrants themselves want to do. It's almost just feeding into this idea that, immigrants, exist in this country purely to, serve the dominant culture or whatever and to provide them a service. And I felt so weird about that sort of implication as the child of immigrants and everything like that. So I tried to do my best to kind of, resist that whole narrative turn. And the way that I did that was, or tried to do that at least, was, forensically looking at these 7 women being like, okay, what did they really want to do with their food? And, something that I saw in all 7 of those stories is that, they may have come to cooking for different reasons. Some of them may have been like housewives for the first time in their lives and, they're in this new country and, language barriers make it hard for them to get a job. And so what they do, they just like start cooking for their husbands and everything like that. And then they realize, oh, damn, I actually really like this. Others may have decided, early on, even back in their home countries, that they want to devote their lives to food. But whatever it was, they all got to a place where they really did see food as an art, and I hope that my readers see that as well. What has always kind of drawn me to this profession is, using food as a way to understand people and humanity. And sometimes I've found that when I'm writing these stories, food, the object itself, is like the least interesting aspect of the narrative. It can be a lot of fun to kind of describe, how the food looks and, what it must have tasted like and stuff like that. You can kind of like flex your writerly muscles there in some ways. But, what I am really focused on is the soul and humanity of each of these women,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Although I do think that the way some recipes are written can also illuminate a lot about a person's
For sure.
About personality. I remember a good friend of the family died, and he was this amazing, strange, very artistic guy who hung like chairs upside down from his ceiling and would like make food on these like hot stones, and he was a wild person.
I want to write about him.
And no shoes. He's very interesting. He's the grandson of Hugo von Hofmannsthal, the famous
Sorry,
writer. That's okay.
dumb.
No. Operas. He wrote like the libretto for Salome, the opera,
wow,
stuff like
okay.
that, and the Rosenkavalier. But we decided to print one of his, Michael Zimmer was his name, one of his recipes on the back of the little card we would give people at the memorial. And because the recipe was written in such a way that was so unique and was so him.
Right.
You know, and I remember at the end of the recipe, he wrote, "The simplicity of the instructions is no indication for the like depth of flavor." And you know what I mean? And like to word something like that, or to think of that says so much about a person's personality.
Does. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, recipe writing itself is an art form. Yeah.
If you could change something about the food industry right now, what would it be and how would you want to change it?
Oh my God, just
or is that
one
a
thing.
Crazy question because you're already doing it anyway?
Oh, that's so funny and sweet. No, I'm trying to think like what is the one thing that I would change about it? Oh my God. I would abolish awards, honestly. And I say this as someone who's on like, have a James Beard Award or whatever.
Like, no one's allowed to win anymore after my award.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
everyone's
I got my
award
thing.
Gets taken away. I'm the last one in the history book.
Right?
So I told you this before, full disclosure, I told Mayukh this before this interview.
Oh my God.
That I love sayings, proverbs, stuff like that, because I always think that they kind of illuminate you to the like mentality or the way that a language or culture kind of thinks about the world, like proverbs and sayings, you know, do. And you are the first person ever to have been so good to send me your favorite one, favorite Bengali saying. And I'm not going to pronounce this because I'm going to butcher it.
Oh, watch it. See, I do too. Yeah, right. It's called, or the saying goes, mache pate Bengali. So it basically translates to, Bengali by fish and rice, or fish and rice make a Bengali. And so fish is pretty integral to Bengali cooking, whether you're in West Bengal in India, which is technically where my family's from, or Bangladesh. But the funny thing is that, the saying is pretty popular in some circles because, Bengalis, they reportedly swear by fish. They love their like machir jhol, which is like essentially this fish gravy or fish curry, again, in delicate translations, right? But funny story is that I'm actually allergic to fish, which is wild. And so this, again, another, illusion from my childhood narrative is that, I would spend a lot of nights like locked in my room while my mom was cooking because she was making matcha jhol, and even the fumes would make me like, oh, I need Benadryl, like it would be really, really difficult, right? And like,
fumes?
Yeah, it was so bad.
Wild.
Like, my I was just so sensitive to that, and my body was, and it still is to some extent, but I basically could not experience this. What I'm told is this vital aspect of my culture, all these fish dishes that are so integral to so much of Bengali cooking, I've just been deprived of, because of this, terrible genetic curse or whatever. So, it's basically, there were a few times where I had like, a humorous little like identity crisis being like, oh my God, am I actually Bengali because I can't have fish, And it's like, God, I spun a few essays out of that, but
Really?
I did. I wonder if they still exist. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, but maybe I was switched at birth. Who knows? Maybe I'm not actually Bengali. Maybe I'm like, who knows? We'll see.
I think I was switched at birth because I hate the cold so much.
And you're from Germany.
And I was born in Germany.
Right.
It makes zero sense. I'm like, I think maybe I was born in Brazil. Or
right.
Like
yeah,
that.
It could be.
But another way that you were an outsider.
Yeah, exactly. Even within my own household, I was on the margins, it's so sad. So I know this feeling of being an outsider acutely.
So do you love Swedish fish? Because that's
I do. It's the closest approximation. Yeah.
But also you are kind of like the fish king because you don't eat fish. Fish are safe with you.
Yeah, that's
never
true.
Heard of fish.
I would never.
You're like, what are you talking about?
I was like, where is this going?
You're totally the king of fish.
Right.
I love it. So fishy business. Is that what it means? No. Bengali by fish and rice.
Yes, exactly.
So when would you say that? When somebody does something super Bengali, or when would you throw that out?
You know, that's a good question. I was asking my mom about this, and she did not even have the answer to it.
Really?
You know, she was like, I don't know. I'm like, is this a saying? Because other people recognize it, you know? I think it's like when, you know, people are just kind of conversing casually about like, you know, or engaging in what we call adda, which is, you know, like casual conversation, lighthearted conversation or whatever, you know, talking
What's it
about
called? Adda?
Adda, yeah.
Adda. Cool.
There's actually a restaurant called Adda in Queens. Wonderful. You should check it out.
Where in Queens?
Oh my God. Long Island City, maybe?
Okay.
Question mark? I forget. It's
Okay.
wonderful. But, you know, they might be engaging some adda and just, you know, say something like that when they're talking about, you know, who they are as Bengali people or whatever. You know, that's my understanding of it. But maybe I'm totally off base. And you might
Anybody listening that is Bengali, let us know.
Or don't let me know, please. Don't barge in my inbox like that Julia Child lady, you know?
Don't let Mayukh know. Let me know.
Thank you.
Be nice.
Yes.
Put it in the comments.
Oh, God.
Okay. Okay, Mayukh, it is time
Oh, God.
for the poll questionnaire.
I'm so
I don't know if you're
stressed.
ready. There are some new questions specifically for you.
Oh, my God. Okay.
If you had to eat one American person, who would you eat?
I would eat my best friend, Amy Rose Spiegel, because I love her so much and I want her to be a part of me
my
forever.
God.
Although I'm like not accounting for like how digestive systems work, but whatever, you know, like I would eat her because she is just scrumptious in every way.
I love it. Amy Rose, all you have to do from now on is hang a fish around your
Right.
neck when you're around
Exactly,
Mayukh.
yeah.
Okay, then you'll be safe.
Perfect.
Okay. If you were president of the United States of America, what American food would you ban?
Okay. You know, I know you're just questioning about like whether this is truly American or whatever,
Yeah.
but cheesecake because I love it so much, and I really, but
Me
like if
too.
I eat it, I like feel, you know, that moment of pleasure is then followed by this moment of like doom because you know, my body can't handle it, you know, like dairy, you know. It's
What's
just
your
so-
favorite cheesecake in New York?
Oh God, I don't think the Trader Joe's cheesecake. I don't know.
Have you ever had Eileen's?
No, what is?
Oh my God.
God.
Mike, have you had Eileen's cheesecake? Oh my God. It's
where
the
is it?
best
Tell me all
fucking-
about it.
Well, it's called Cleveland Square, but it's on Kenmare and Lafayette.
Okay.
You know that
Yeah,
little,
of course.
square that forms down there,
Right.
below Spring Street, and it's a tiny little place. It's called Eileen's. It's kind of legendary. Okay.
Oh, whoops.
They have mini cheesecakes.
Okay.
They have different flavors. All the flavors are good. If you
Uh-huh.
get a cheesecake for Thanksgiving, they put a little turkey on it.
Oh, damn. What does it taste like? The turkey?
The turkey's just a toy.
It's like plastic. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
you can keep it. I'm
I
excited
love how
about that.
that's
I
my
never
first
got Happy
question.
Meals
Like
as a
the
kid.
weirdest questions possible. What does a
It's
turkey
a
taste
turkey
like?
cheesecake. That'd be so gross. And here's a cheesecake that tastes like stuffing,
Yeah.
you weirdos.
Disgusting.
But yeah, the
No.
most amazing cheesecake. But I hear you. Cheesecake is a hard one to process
It is,
in
it's
the
tough.
body.
Yeah.
So you'd get rid of it altogether.
I would, you know, just
Okay.
to reduce the temptation that I
Wow.
have, you know.
Wow.
So
Okay. All right. Yeah, I respect that. I
Sorry.
respect it. If you had to make a dish to represent the United States of America to an alien visiting from outer space,
oh my God.
what dish would you make?
Oh my goodness. Oh, damn.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know. I'm sorry.
What the hell? No, it's fine. Oh my God. Okay, why is the word succotash coming to my mind? You know, just like some succotash with like flavors from like all over the world. I don't know.
Can you explain what succotash is for those people
You know,
listening that don't know?
I honestly probably
Me.
cannot. So let's go with something else, you know,
Okay.
because I'm going to like,
Butcher it.
yeah, I will definitely, you know. Okay.
You could. I would probably make a good and plenty pie.
Oh, say more.
I don't know. Just like good and plenty
Uh-huh.
in a pie dish
Right.
and pour dough over it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd give to the aliens.
Yeah.
I'd be like, this is America.
Right. You know,
This is
maybe
what they eat here.
I think you're onto something, you know? I feel like the pie thing is a good kind of
Okay, a pie. Just kind of one pie.
Yes.
A kind of pie.
Fillings TBD.
If you could deport one American person, who would you deport?
Oh, man, this is tough, right? Because, you know, I'm tempted to say someone like some terrible right-wing person who's like enacted awful policies, but I don't want to like hoist them on like, you know, some unsuspecting population or whatever. So you could like deport them to the sea or something like that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I could deport. Why don't we... This is like going against the whole ethos of this podcast, maybe. So just excuse this provocation. I'd love to, you know, like maybe deport me, you know?
Oh my God, I thought you were going to say me.
No.
I was like, oh my God, he's about to deport me.
No.
Deport you?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I'll take the sacrifice. I don't want to.
You want to get out of America.
Maybe that's,
Okay,
maybe that's
you're
it,
like,
and I'm just not
maybe
telling you.
Get me out of here.
Yeah, I want a
already.
vacation. No.
No, we are not deporting you.
Oh my God, but I don't know.
You're an integral part of the cultural fabric of this
You're very sweet.
country.
Thank
You're
you.
making this country a better place.
All right. Well,
for
thank you for
us to
saying
live
that.
in.
You're very sweet.
With your gifts. But then again, maybe it's time that you go somewhere else and bestow them with your gifts.
No, that's very sweet. Maybe that's true. Yeah,
No,
but
I don't
you
want
know,
to deport you.
otherwise, it would probably be like some. I don't want to name any specific names because I don't
Rhymes
want.
with fucker Gnarlson.
Exactly. How
Yes.
did you know that?
Yes,
I was
yes,
thinking
yes.
of this person.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah.
Wow.
I could.
Wild. You are good at this.
What's your star sign?
Capricorn. Wait, is that a star
course.
sign? Okay.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. I just say I'm an Aries with a double rat rising.
Oh, I
because
don't even know what the hell that means.
I grew up in New York. I don't either. I have no idea. Okay, if you could add one face to Mount Rushmore, whose face would you add?
Oh my God. Whitney Houston's.
Nice.
I love her. Jersey girl. Classic.
Yes.
Just love her.
Yes,
Yeah. She deserves all the love and
She
respect.
does.
And it's been
I
10
agree.
years,
So
right?
tragic. Has it?
I think. Maybe it's been more. I don't know. But
Oh my
it
God.
sucks. I miss
10
her.
years. That's
so
crazy.
much.
I miss her too.
Yeah.
And then finally, I ask everybody this. Mayukh Sen, do you know how I can meet David Hasselhoff?
Yes. Okay. So.
You do?
Well, no, but sorry, all his confidence. Yeah. Okay, so I'm like a soap opera fan. I grew up watching soaps, right? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that he got his start on The Young and the Restless, right?
I think you're right.
And so I feel like your way in has to be like, you know, becoming the president of like some fan club, some Y&R fan club, because now like soaps are like on life support basically, right? They like
Yeah,
barely exist,
true.
but Y&R is one of the ones that's on air still. But I think you need to become like president of some local fan club for Y&R, or you know,
The
really
Queens
just
Young and Restless
yes,
fan
exactly, the
club.
Ridgewood, like
Yes.
you know, or you need to kind of enmesh yourself in like some online community devoted to Y&R and really just like gain a ton of respect there. And I think that is the way he will notice you. He'll be like, who is this crazy woman who is like, you know, unearthing all these clips of me on this soap opera from like, you know, many decades ago. And
I
then
love
he's
this.
going to be so charmed by that. And I am absolutely certain that is going to be the way that
Whoa, that's the best and also the nuttiest answer ever.
Right?
That's a long-term plan. I fucking love it.
I feel like it's worth it though.
You
You know,
guys,
put in
this
the work.
is the last episode of this podcast because I'm now going to devote my life to the Young and the Restless forever and ever and ever. Mayukh, thank you so much for coming on this podcast and talking to me about your book and about you and your life. I could talk to you for hours. Where can people find you on social media?
Oh, thank you, first of all, for having me. So let's see. I'm on Twitter at Senator Mayukh. That's Mayukh. And then my Instagram is mayukh.sen. So Mayukh.sen. So find me there. Follow, like, subscribe, etc., etc.
Exactly. And please go out and buy the book, Tastemakers, 7 Immigrant Women Who Revolutionized Food in America. It's out in paperback now.
In October, yes.
In October.
Almost, yeah. Sorry, I brazenly brought it to this recording.
I love it. Well, it's out in hardcover's out now, out paperback in October. If you still, physically buy books, but you can get it on Kindle and all that stuff.
It's true. An audiobook as well. Yeah.
Audiobook. So. It's so amazing. It's beautifully written. It's suspenseful, it's funny, it's touching, it's important, it's a historical document, it's for people who love food, for people who love history, for people who love good writing. Hello. And yeah, it's a really great book, and I encourage everybody to get it. And I think we might do a little giveaway.
Oh my God.
Yes, where you can win this book, and we will send it to you. Stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you to Mike Albanese.
Mike, thank you so much.
The most amazing in the biz. Also a food writer, by the way. Little known fact on this podcast. We haven't talked about that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please leave a little review on the old iTunes. 5 stars only. You know what I mean? Rate and review this thing. That helps a lot. Tell your friends if you love it. Tell your enemies if you hated it. I am Lucie Pohl, your host. We love you. Thank you. And goodbye. If you liked what you just heard, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, recommend to all your friends. And if you hated it, recommend it to your enemies. Thank you for listening to Immigrant Jam, the podcast with me, Lucie Pohl. Have a delicious and nutritious day.